Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick and welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She's a woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. So let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. My guest on this week's Her Conversations is Lisen Ydse Christiansen, founder of the Sumati Concept, a company that hosts worldwide retreats that combine the philosophies of yoga and sustainability. Another aspect that's unique to Lisen is that she has a corporate career in a waste management company and still travels. During our conversation, we talk about her early life and how her experiences of loss and self-harming behaviour shaped her, the advantage of being a creative in a corporate environment, and also her greater vision for the Sumati Concept. But as always, I begin by asking my guests, Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel at your most her?
I feel when I'm most her when I would say after completing guiding a yoga or meditation session. Because it's like when you see the group and just like when you see them sitting there, they're coming out of their savasana or out of their meditation pose and they're still sitting there and you can feel, even though they're sitting completely still, you can see kind of like the transformation, even with their eyes closed, and there's still some kind of energy that you just, it's almost like you can touch and feel it. And that also really feeds a lot of energy to myself as well. So yeah, I would say that whenever I'm leading a group in a yoga or meditation and I can actually, see that it's inspired some kind of positive energy transformation to people, then that's definitely when I feel the most her.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And can you just tell a little bit about your background and story and how you actually got to the point where you're leading your yoga retreats?
Right. Well, my background is quite a windy road, so to speak. I've traveled quite a lot myself throughout the years, like started even just, way back in university. And I think even like, as soon as I finished high school, I was like, I need to leave. I need to do something. I could just feel like there was something in me that I needed to explore. And I felt like I couldn't do that, here in Norway. I felt like I really had to go out and see the world. So I went as far as I could possibly go to Vancouver in Canada, across the pond. And I stayed there for almost close to 7 years and really thought that I had everything planned out. I was going to, I went to art school and I started doing a lot of different designs. And even in art school, like I did Gen Fine Arts, but I always had an interest in fashion design and jewelry making and all kinds of crafty stuff. And really just self-taught myself in a lot of those things because I didn't take design in school. And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a lot of creative people who allowed me to kind of explore and get into all of that, and gave me some opportunities to actually go after it as well. And then I actually thought that I was going to, that's where I was going to lead my life. It was going to be in Vancouver. I was going to be a designer and an artist. And Um, even though I was back then kind of struggling, and I was like living in a tiny box of an apartment with my then current boyfriend, and really typical artistic life, as you can only just like imagine on TV. Like, it was like the worst building ever. And going back there, having visited Vancouver, I'm just like, I look at the building and I can't believe that I used to live there. Um, it was like, not a very good neighborhood and all that, but it allowed me to really pursue what I wanted to do. And then one day, something completely changed everything around. I remember standing in a cafe with my friends, and I got a phone call from my dad saying that my mom, well, actually, I can't even remember if it was my mom or my dad that I spoke to now, because it was just like, it's all kind of a blur. All I can remember is the feeling when they told me that they had discovered that she had cancer. And it was really serious. And, all they said that you need to come home because we don't know how this is going to end. And I just remember like the whole world just kind of shattered, and I actually literally fell to the ground and just couldn't stand up because like my whole body was just like shaking so much. And so I traveled back home to Norway and stayed with my mom and my family throughout that whole time. And we had, almost close to a year, maybe a little bit less, together before she passed away at, early age of 53. And because I was, working freelance and I didn't really have any attachments in Vancouver, it was easy for me to kind of just pack up my bags and go home and stay home. After that, stayed home and for almost another year as well, with my dad, my younger brother, and so that I was close to them and my sister and everyone. And then I still had that feeling that there's something more for me somewhere. So I traveled again. This time, I promised them I wouldn't go that far away, so I stayed within Europe, and ended up in south of France. And while I was there, beautiful, living in Saint-Tropez area, and everyone thinks that that's really glamorous, but worked a lot and exercised a lot. Thought I was eating healthy and right, but something changed in my body. Like, I started to have a lot of muscular pain. I got really high blood pressure, and I was only 30 years old. And my doctor said that you need to make some changes in your life. And I had promised myself I would stay down there for 2 years, which I did. Came back home to Norway and had no idea what I was going to do. Absolutely nothing. I was, didn't really have much money. I was sleeping on my dad's couch, had a bunch of student loan, and was really reluctant to move back to Norway. My sister convinced me to go and drop off my resume at a recruiting office. And 2 days later, they called me up and said that they thought they had found a job for me. And it ended up being one of the best things that probably had, happened. I got a job in a waste management company and really just worked my way up in the company on a short time. And And then still there was something missing. I started to change, my life a little bit by traveling, because finally I had the means to actually travel but not work 14 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
By doing so, like the combination, I could actually travel and enjoy the travels. And I would do all these like solo travels, go to Thailand for Christmas. I went to like yoga retreats, and went to Maui, different places, and I would spend hours just sitting at like beaches or at the top of like volcano craters, and just really just watch the clouds go by, or the waves washing in, and just really felt myself connected to the movement of the earth, if that makes sense in any way. And I just really felt at peace. And I think it was like, it was in those moments that I just felt truly, truly happy and just calm, and just felt like I was myself without any kind of clutter around me. And I didn't realize until I started to develop my own personal yoga practice further, that those moments was kind of like a meditation in itself. Then on one of my solo travels, I went to Bali for a month and traveled around. And I went into yoga class there, and brilliant yoga teacher. At the end of the class in Savasana, I started to cry. And I was like, I didn't even know why, but I could just like feel my body shaking. But it was a good feeling. It was a good cry.
Yeah.
And that was like when I had my epiphany that I'm going to become a yoga teacher. Like I need to, I just felt like I just had something to give to other people. Like I want that feeling that I have, like that good feeling and the positive energy, and to pass that on to others is the most amazing feeling ever. I discovered that why not try and combine all the things that actually truly make me happy by teaching yoga, traveling the world, and also combine it with all the experiences of that life has given me of loss, self-judgment and self-harming, and all the things combined, as well as the work experiences that I have of creative work and of working with sustainability and working in waste management. Because I truly believe that all of these things ties in together with the yoga philosophy as well. So that's what, led me to starting doing my yoga retreats.
Perfect. And even before I ask you the next question, when you said about travel and you spoke about the movement of the earth and it being a meditation, I just like 100% totally get it. Having been out in Bali for coming up to like 3 months now, and I felt this in different spots anyway, but this is like the longest that I've ever been away in one stretch, is when you spoke about the movement of the earth. I mean, I had it like literally here, like one of the early weeks that I was here, there was an earthquake. So literally felt the movement of the earth here. But I get what you mean about like meditation, because in comparison to being in living in a big city like London, where you're actually kind of running against nature, and you're kind of building a life that kind of you don't get the opportunity really unless you really focus on finding your meditation to feel the movement of the earth. I think that's one of the things that you've kind of pinpointed that travel gives you. It gives you the movement of the earth, but also it just shows you the diversity of the earth, how different people are, but then how similar they are at the same time. And it just gives you like a multitude of perspectives that it's one of those things that you can't really explain to anybody until they do it, because it's a personal experience, and yet it's a universal experience, because ultimately what everyone will say is the same, but you can't really put it inside them.
And it's also I just feel like you say, you're talking about how you had a busy life in London, and that's exactly how I feel as well. Like I started working working on the side, kind of part-time jobs when I was a teenager, when I was still in I don't know what you would call it in England, but it's when you're around 14 years old, and up until like from then and all through my studies, I always had a job. I always worked on summer holidays. I always worked on Christmas holidays. And I've always been the kind of person that stays late in the office, or and I enjoy it. I kind of tend to be a bit of a workaholic sometimes. So to actually force yourself in a way, in a good way, to actually take those moments of silence, I think it's so important, especially in today's society, when we're so caught up with our social media and our phones and computers and Netflix and everything that's like kind of going around. It's just when I've had people asking me, it's like, well, did you bring a book or did you do anything? It's like, no, I just sat at the beach, and I don't know if I sat there for 2 or 3 hours, but there was nothing, like no phone, no book, no music. It was just me sitting there and getting completely drawn into watching the waves, washing in and out on the shore, and like really listen. And as I listened, I also realized that it's like my breath is connected to the movements. And it's like that flow of energy, when you talk about in yoga class, that feel yourself grounded, feel yourself connected. Like that's what that really means to me, is that you actually are fully sensing everything around you and everything within you.
Yeah, I hear that. I understand that 100%. And what's me actually, as I've been out here, is been how connected I feel, even more connected to the sea and like the ocean edge than I would have thought. And I was unaware of that, even though I'm still back inland at the moment. Every time I go to the sea, it's like a bigger experience. And I was just not aware of it, because, you live in a city, so you just think a green space is a gift enough. But I realised that I need to be more by the water than anything, but I just still want to stay in the town for a little bit. I want to ask you about your company, about the Sumati Concept, and a couple of questions actually that you can kind of tie in is, how soon after your teacher training did you decide that you wanted to create your company, and also what does it mean?
I think I actually decided that I wanted to start something even before I did my teacher training. But it wasn't until I completed it that I actually felt that I also had the courage to do it. We're always, I feel like, especially us women, we have a tendency to kind of bring ourselves down a bit and doubt our capabilities. And and which we shouldn't, because we're capable of so many great things. And but we're constantly given advice of like, oh, you shouldn't do this, or other people are comparing you to what other people are doing. Like, I would hear stories, if I would say that I want to be a yoga teacher, then it's like, well, you can't be a yoga teacher, that's just a hobby. Or name dropping of comparing me to other yoga teachers. And I was like, why do I need to compare myself to them? Because my background is completely different. We have completely different, we come from different places. So we can also bring different aspects of that to people. A yoga teacher is not a yoga teacher. We're different. We're all individual people and have individual circumstances that have led us to those points of being a teacher who wants to guide others. And obviously that is an aspect that we bring into our teaching as well. How you use your words, your linguistics in class, and your approach to people. So I think, it was while I was still, because I did my teacher training in Bali with Suna Yoga, and it was right after my teacher training, while I was still there, that I decided that I wanted to do this. And I remember as well, like on our final night, that my yoga teacher, he said something to me that it was just like, it made me cry, and I was like unstoppable that night. I was like crying so much, but out of good things. And because I think like it just really released a lot of feelings within me. Like finally, you've done an intense training, that's one thing, and finally you can relax. But it was something more than that. I think it was just like, I felt like it was the beginning of something, and it was like joyful tears and a bit of fear all mixed together, and a lot of gratitude on top of that. But that's when I decided to do it. I've always kind of thought that I wanted to do something for myself. Before I thought it was design. When I was in Vancouver, I realized while I was still in Bali, and I remember having a conversation with my yoga instructor about this as well, that I felt like I could finally connect all the dots. That, and if you look at my resume, it's not a straight line of choices that I've done, because it's like, who thought that, someone with an arts background would somehow end up in property management, and would then end up having a career in waste management. Finally I could actually see all the dots. Like it's been a windy road, but I could tell, how I could kind of pick from all these different experiences and tie them into one. And the reason why I chose the name the Sumati Concept, because Sumati means good mind, good thought. And honestly, like it took me, like this is like tracing back. I was like thinking of different things. I wanted to do something to also honor my mom. And I was like, how can I do this? And I translated her name, and Anne, which was her name, or Anna, in Hebrew means gracious or graciousness, and not necessarily in the only mere physical aspect, but being gracious to others. And I thought that that was really beautiful. And I wanted to have a Sanskrit word. And then, when you translated that into Sanskrit, then it became Sumati, and it means good mind, good thoughts. So for me, that means the passing of, that good energy to everyone that surround us, our communities, to if it's my yoga group or if it's to the environment, that because I really believe that, to lead a sustainable life means, and to be sustainable is to have that good energy of passing that on to others. So that's how I ended up with the name. And the reason why I also, call it a concept is because it's not just yoga classes. It's something more than that. When I do the retreats, I want to combine it with everything. So I do the workshops with, the aspect of sustainability, and talking about how sustainability is both a personal thing, and it's about social sustainability, it's about environmental sustainability, and also tapping into the yoga philosophy and how it all links together. If you think about like the Patanjali's Eightfold Path of Yoga, and how the first two steps of the yamas and niyamas are ethical guidelines of living. So, which brings in with everything about the environment. So I really want to raise awareness, and also, if I can, pass on to, some kind of knowledge around these topics as well, then great. I want to inspire for a change, and inspire for something good around us, and also to focus on the local communities that we visit. Because when you travel to Bali, for example, like, it's known to be this really great holiday place, but there's still a lot of people, living in the rural areas that doesn't have that much. And there's still people living in poverty, and it's a huge problem with the waste pollution, not just in the oceans and on the beaches, but also the solid waste that you see on the streets. There's no system for it there. So, I started to been in contact recently with a couple of companies that do some good work, and going to tie that in with the yoga retreats as well. So there's some exciting things planning.
That's so good, and I totally resonate with you. You're talking about how did I end up doing this job? Like, I come from this part and this part, and suddenly I'm here doing this. I was having almost that exact same thought this morning. I'm like, how did I end up doing this? I'm sure I'm a singer. When you kind of like thread it back and see where you are at this particular point in time, and all the skills that you need in order to make one particular thing happen, it all makes sense when you're kind of like, look, well, in order for me to do this right now, it makes sense that I went through that and went through that and went through that. So it's all perfectly timed, and it's all perfectly figured out, even though we can't work it out until we kind of just sit back and do a little bit of hindsight on the whole thing. I wanted to ask you about how your yoga feeds into your work within a corporate environment, and what that philosophy brings to you as a woman in a corporate environment.
I definitely feel, changed after, with my regular practice of yoga. And I feel like people are also noticing the change. How, because it's a busy world, working in large corporations, for good and bad. And I definitely, like to bring the philosophy and mentality of yoga into my workplace as well, and like how I interact with people.
My understanding of being in the corporate world can be, to an extent, quite rigid. And, creativity doesn't seem to be first and foremost appreciated within that environment. And you come from a creative background, and you're still creating outside of it. And you're then bringing other things into that environment, which means you're still keeping an element of looseness and creativity and openness, which is a creative,
honestly, I think, that was maybe partially one of the reasons why I did get hired in the first place, was because of my creativity. Because I think in order to, be some kind of a manager, leader, to be able to see solutions when there might be none, that are obvious, or maybe it's not straightforward, then you need to kind of be able to think a little bit creatively. And as well, like just how you interact with people, to be able to interact with, everyone in different kinds of offices, and understanding the big picture. I think that has definitely helped me thrive in my job. I've worked as a quality manager, and I've done project management, and worked in HR as well within the company. And, I've had people asking me when, other external companies that I worked with on projects and stuff, and they ask me like, where did you study, to become an engineer? And it always makes me laugh, because I don't know if they actually want to hear the answer to tell them. It's like, well, I started a bachelor's in general fine arts, and I didn't even actually graduate. So, I think definitely creativity has helped. And, obviously the fact that I did in the past work on projects, and did a lot of different things, that has helped as well. And, traveling, I always encourage people to travel, and especially young people, because I think you learn so much life experiences from it, by traveling solo, especially. And so I think that had, helped me in a way as well. But obviously, to come in as a young female in a large corporation, and you don't have the formal background or anything, then it's really tough, because you kind of have to prove yourself. One thing is that, especially this kind of industry is very male dominant. So you have to prove, that you are capable just because you're a woman sometimes. But then, you're younger than maybe the majority. And at the same time, you also don't have the experience and formal background. So, people are kind of doubting you. And I definitely felt that for the first couple of years, like I put in a lot of hours, because I really wanted to prove that I can do this and I'm good at this. And also just for myself, obviously, like I also really felt the need because everybody wants to feel that, I would say like a level of success, but I wouldn't when I say success, I don't mean success in terms of like a title or earnings or anything like that, but the feeling of accomplishment.
Mm.
So I think that yoga has also really just helped me. I feel like it has helped me actually gain more confidence as a woman.
Mm.
When I was younger, and as well, yoga really, enhances your creativity when you practice it on a regular basis. So
Mm-hmm.
that helps too. But as a young woman, when I was a teenager, I didn't always have the best of confidence, and I was kind of periodic bulimic tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was in high school, and then when I moved to Vancouver, I started self-harming myself. And it led to a point where I ended up in hospital one night.
Mm.
And there's few people that know about this in the past, and obviously now maybe more people will know about it. But it's actually from being, hosting my yoga retreats that I have been able to finally also talk about it without feeling shame.
Mm-hmm.
And just think instead that I'm using this bad experience to empower myself, because that's how I feel within me.
Mm.
So why should I feel ashamed of talking about it?
Mm-hmm.
But there is a stigma, to talk about those kind of things. I've never spoken about it with my family. And very few people around me also know about it. So it's taken a lot of years. Like I'm 36. This is 2019. It's going to be my 37th year. And this is like finally the moment where I feel confident. I feel proud of everything that I am.
Mm.
I just really hope that more more women will have that experience of empowerment in their life, because it's so important, and it's such a forceful energy to push us, to become the best that we can be. If we just kind of believe in ourselves, because I feel like that's what kind of was holding me back in a lot of situations. I can see now how I've subconsciously kind of ruined a lot of opportunities just because I did something destructive, like self-destructive. Whether it was, partying when I was younger and getting too drunk to be able to wake up for an appointment the next morning, or hanging out with the wrong crowd when I was a teenager, or whatever it was. Like I kind of look back at it now that I did all these things because I was doubting myself. Like there was something in myself that was actually holding me back. And I feel like once you overcome those, those obstacles and those feelings of self-judgment, then, the world is your oyster. You can do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's yoga has definitely helped me then, even in my current situation, because I wouldn't have been able to become, a manager in a waste management company for one of the largest regions in Norway in the field of in the field that I am, without having the belief in myself that I could do it. Because there was a lot of people around me that didn't have that belief, and I also felt that there was people who didn't want me to succeed.
I think that's, we all get given a portion of people that it's like, this is you, this is who you want to be. And then as part of your life journey, we're going to give you this handful of people who are just going to try and stop you from doing it. I think we all get those people that are our obstacles. But just before we move on from that, I just want to say, one, thank you for sharing about your experience in terms of you going through self-harming and bulimia. And what I think, from my personal opinion and observation, in terms of people not feeling confident or able to openly share about going through these experiences, it's this catch-22 situation. And I truly think it comes from societal messaging. As young women, we kind of go through school and then we get immersed in life and, magazines and television and our peer groups. And this is what you're supposed to be a young, successful woman. And we're all kind of policing each other. And yet we're all, it's not about the individual. So we're all as individuals trying to follow this one thing. And pretty much all of us are just going, I'm not measuring up, and are trying to deal with those feelings of inadequacy in our own way. And it kind of just manifests in so many different ways. And yet when we're then abusing ourselves in whatever way we choose, like choice is a good word, but then we don't feel that we have a safe space to be able to tell people to help us, and we continue to suffer in silence. And it's not until then you get to that point of meditation that you would have found in yoga, that you would have found in travel, in those quiet moments when you start to actually really connect with yourself and be able to have a conversation with yourself and actually realize who you are, and then start to separate yourself from the story that you've always believed yourself to be, or the projection that you've been trying to measure up to that doesn't actually exist in any one person on the face of the planet, because it's an avatar of rubbish. And we're still all trying to aim for this thing, and we're all failing because that person doesn't exist, that woman doesn't exist. Even the most perfect supermodel, just like, she doesn't look like she looks like on the cover of a magazine even. And when I've been seeing stories about Giselle, who was when she was modeling, was the highest paid model on the face of the planet. And she's talking about feelings of major inadequacy when she was going out with Leonardo DiCaprio. You know what I mean? And you got to, as young women, when we're out there in our 20s and 30s, and we're trying to work our way through life and work out what our career is going to be, and what relationship we're going to have, and what clothes we're going to wear, and what music we listen to, and what books we should read. And then the people that are put in front of us, like Giselle, who looks perfect, who's going out with a movie star, it's how more perfect can you be? So you're chasing this thing, and then you're looking at your life going, hell. You know what I mean? I'm nowhere near that. And then years later, you find out that she was just having the most miserable time of her life when she went out with him, So all of that was a myth that we were all chasing. And that's why we just all felt so bad about ourselves. We were just chasing the absolute impossible. None of it was real.
Yeah. I also think that, one of the reasons why I now finally have kind of taken this leap of starting my company and pursuing my passion of yoga and sharing yoga, to others is also because I've been very fortunate, with my boss who hired me in the company, who saw something that most people probably wouldn't have if they had only just looked at my resume,
Mm.
and kind of gave me that space to really unfold myself, just be like, I was fortunate to be able to, say that I want to work on this project. It's like, okay, you think you can do it? Do it. Um, and then, to be able to have all these opportunities and actually kind of pave my own direction, which, like you said before, a lot of big corporations, they don't really allow that creativity. But I feel like I've been fortunate enough to have that space, um, and also that they've been supportive of like my yoga journey. When I did my teacher training, I asked to get a leave of absence for that time to go to Bali and do this, and they said yes. So I don't think a lot of companies would have done that. So, um, you know, that's kind of gratitude for them, that group of people that I have there that have that belief in me. Um, and also, like, obviously, I, have myself to thank for it as well, because I did a lot of work to kind of get to that point. Um, and I'm also really fortunate to have, um, I'm fortunate to have a supportive family, but, and I'm very close with my dad, and we've become much closer in the last couple of years. Um, and we have long talks, and which is really great. Um, and he's kind of like me. He's kind of like a creative soul as well. Always have like tons of projects going.
Right.
And he understands, what I've kind of gone through of things that I want to do and achieve. But he's a dad as well. So obviously, it's like when people give you advice and say like, well, you need to have, the steady job. Like you can't pursue your own company or do these things, the kind of things that are outside the box, basically. But I actually eventually told him that, you know what, I don't want to discuss this any further with you. I'm not asking for your advice, at least not yet. And don't give it until I ask for it. Because if you can't give me an advice that is an advice that comes from encouragement, then I don't want to hear it. Instead, and I know that he's coming from a place of love. But, I said it straight out. That's what I said to him as well. I know you come from a place of love, but you give advice based on your experiences, because that's what we do. There's a difference between our instinct and our intuition. And I really feel, and this is something that I feel that yoga has helped me as well to, connect more with my intuition. That feeling and that driving force that there is something that I need to pursue. And he's coming from his place of instinct, his instinct as a dad to protect. But an instinct is, the way I see it, something that comes from projections of our past experiences and our past emotions. So, that might be good, but that might not be the only answer. So I think for other young entrepreneurs or, women who's out there who wants to, even if you're, it doesn't matter how old you are, if you feel that you want to make a change in your life, I think that you should. And if you feel that you have something that's kind of like a burning desire in you to do something, pursue your passion. That doesn't mean that you have to give everything else up, but obviously we all have to be realistic about our options as well, or our choices. But when people around you, whether it's your family or friends or whoever it is, give you a piece of advice, I always think that I take that advice to heart, like I listen, but that advice goes through kind of like my internal process of elimination, um, in a way.
Yeah.
Like I can, like as I'm saying it, I can see like the spiral going through in my mind. It's like, okay, I keep this and I throw this away. I keep this, I throw this away. You know, like you can't, you have to always like weigh everything up against each other. And it's like, because if you're constantly are going to follow other people's advice and not trusting yourself, then, you know, then I don't think that you will, you know, get to that point. You won't get to that point of her, you know. It's so yeah, that's that was my piece of advice for this evening. No,
That's good. No, the reason that one just like made me laugh so much is when you say, you know, about people giving advice. It's I get advice a lot of the time. I've always had people's advice, stroke opinion a lot of the time. And especially when I was first kind of endeavoring, because, you know, like you say, as a creative person, you always have like little pots cooking of like different projects and this and that, because just inspiration will take you. And sometimes it's just trying something. It's not always for it to go anywhere. Just to kind of flex your muscles in a certain direction. But I've always like tried lots of different things, and because I've just had this propensity to be creative and make stuff and see where it goes. And there's always been a lot of opinion stroke advice around, and it's been especially when I was starting out with new ideas on certain things, I would get swayed by people's advice, especially if they knew me, if they were like close family members, or, you know, if they had advice about things, then I would take it 100%. And if it was something that was kind of veering towards the negative of what I was doing, then I'd start to doubt my own ideas. What I realize now is advice stroke opinion is going to come from anybody. And like you say, when it comes from a place of love, people are trying to keep you safe. And a lot of the time they're thinking like, are you getting, you know, are you getting paid? Are you getting money? Is it, are you going to be wasting your time? Are you going to be disappointed? They're thinking of all the things that could possibly go wrong, as opposed to this is just an expression of yourself. So now my criteria for advice is this person someone who's doing what I want to do, has experience in a kind of field? Is it somebody who has started something from zero and is X amount of ways ahead of me? Because if it's not, I'm not really that interested. Or is it someone that would use what I'm trying to offer? If it's neither of those two things, I'm not really that interested in your advice. If it's just advice for the sake of advice, it needs to be you've done it, or you would be someone who would take part in it. Otherwise, I'm listening to everybody.
I think that's like, I totally resonate with what you say, because I feel like the best advices that I've been given in the last, I would say like last couple of years, it's come from either, you know, friends, or also like people that, you know, I just met, that I don't really know. But who actually understands, you know, not necessarily, to say the creative process might not be the correct thing to say, but you know, the people that understand that you have something you want to try out, and that can be completely different field. I've had people working, you know, as chefs or in agriculture, whatever it might be. It still ties in with what I'm, you know, what I want to achieve as well with my business. Because it's that entrepreneurial mind, and it's thinking outside the box, of doing something different. I've been told that I probably should change the name of my company. I have to call it something with yoga, which might be true. People would probably understand more what it's about, but I really feel that that's not the right thing, because it's more, you know, it's more of a lifestyle that I want to bring. It's a concept of everything, not just the physical practice of yoga. Yeah, I think, you know, I really think that it's such a great community out there of people who also, you know, want to bring you forward, people that doesn't even know you. If you only like allow yourself to open up, connecting with people, like, I just feel like there's endless opportunities, and you never know as well, like how, you know, how those strangers that you connect with might be good for you in the future as well. So as you know, as entrepreneurs, I think that to be open to meet like-minded people is just amazing. And I feel like that's why I also love traveling. It's because whenever I travel, I seem to, you know, it's like when you solo travel and you meet another solo traveler, then you're kind of already bonded together just by that, because there is something like-minded within each of you. And you know, I also have some really good friends who live in different countries who I feel exactly the same kind of connection with, you know, because we are like-minded in so many ways, even though we live on, you know, completely different continents and are doing completely different things with our lives. But there's still that understanding and support.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so vital to have if you want to, you know, move forward, because you also can't just do it on your own. You know, you need to have some kind of a supportive network around you.
Oh, definitely. And like so many things that you've said within that, I agree with. First, the solo travel, as a solo traveler. And I think it gives you, I've done like a couple of holidays where I've gone with friends, and even within that, and the last one when I went away with a group was actually to Croatia, and it was kind of like on an island where we had like yoga and workshops and the beach time and everything like that. So there was plenty to do. But I still had to like take time out for myself, like a good amount of time every day. And I think I just, when I'm in a different country, I get so much more by going off and being a solo traveler. And I think also when you're a solo traveler, you're just open to having a conversation with somebody who looks like they're on their own as well, because one, you know that you spend so much time just in your own head, and every now and again you just need to have a conversation for your own sanity and just to kind of pull you out of that headspace. But you just end up meeting people, like the amount of times I've walked down this road where I'm staying and I had somebody kind of just pull over on a motorbike and go, "Are you a vegetarian?" I ended up going to their restaurant. You know, then there was another woman that I met last week, and she was a solo traveler again, and we ended up going and sitting and having lunch, and we spoke for like 5 hours about things like this that just one would never happen if I was in a group or with people that I knew that I was traveling, and also wouldn't happen at home. And then you kind of just swap details, and you're like, even yesterday I was in Clear Cafe and I ended up speaking to someone in the toilet, and we lived really close to each other in the UK, and yet she now lives in Singapore and I'm out here in Bali for a while, and just things like that possibly never would happen. And also, when you were talking about, you're talking about advice and opinion, and with regards to the name that you have for your company, I don't think you should change it either. I really like it as it is. It's like you say, the concept. It just gives it. It just puts more curiosity around it, I think.
Well, good. I like it too, so I'm not going to change it.
Yeah, don't change it. It's like, because it's like, one, you want to know what it's about. You want to know what it means, where it comes from, and nothing against anything that's got yoga in the title, but your ethos and philosophy and dream for it is just wider than that. So why,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's, I'm happy you say that, because that's exactly how I feel about it as well. So.
No, it's beautiful. I'm all for like names and branding and everything like that. So I get really excited when I see how someone's drawn all of the pieces and come together with their own concept, like you have.
Mm. Well, I did have someone, a dear friend of mine in Vancouver was like saying exactly that. It's like, to call it a concept, like that sounds something really big. And I was like, yes, exactly. Like, that's a good thing. I want it to be big because I'm dreaming big. Why shouldn't I? And I might not, end up having it a big thing, a big company or whatever. But for me, it's almost like, it's enough if even just 10 people know about it and come to my retreats or, whatever it is. Like, as long as I can do what I'm passionate about, then that's all that matters. And if I can change the course of direction for a handful of people in a positive direction, for all of us to, lead a more sustainable life, then I've done something good for those, 5 people.
Also, it's unique for anybody who comes to a retreat that's from Sumati, the Sumati Concept, knows that this is not just going to be a yoga retreat. It's just, there's going to be like an extra edge, an extra layer of understanding to it. You're going to bring in the sustainability angle, but then also your take and explanation and ethos around sustainability is just broader than where we would first go. And we spoke about it before. It's not just about waste management and things like that. You've kind of brought it into like a broader concept. Just like for a moment, just talk about your take on sustainability, because I really like that, and I don't think we covered that.
Well, for me, the way that I see sustainability is, if you break it down, it's the ability to sustain something, to keep something positive. But the world is evolving, and as humans, we're always evolving. We're evolving throughout the day. Everything goes in waves. And, to sustain something and keep something positive doesn't mean that it has to be kept there forever and ever in status quo. It means that we bring that positivity and that ability to sustain that with us, in the movements that we do throughout life. So if you think about a yoga practice, you can think about it, and you think about sustainability for your personal self, then there can, it's both a physical aspect and the mental aspect of it. But obviously, when you do your asanas and your physical practice, the ability to actually sustain in the poses, to keep that balance within you, because then you're keeping that good energy. And if anyone knows about the different bandhas that you use in yoga, when you talk about like keeping the mula bandha or your jalahara bandha, you're keeping the lock of that energy within you. So to me, like the way I see it then is that our ability to sustain that positive energy in us, with holding our balance, with holding our poses, both physically and mentally, I think that's important. And once we're able to do that and we can have a steady practice, then it's also easier for us to bring that positive energy out to our communities. And if you think about, we talk about the environment all the time, but what's good in taking care of the environment if we're also not taking care of our communities? Because it's one, it's obviously for the people in itself, but it's also just for economical reasons, for for our countries and our cities, that we need to take care of our communities. And so sustainability, and I like to call it social sustainability, is the way that I see it, that you take that ability to sustain your positive energy that you have on your yoga mat, and you expand that. You just like, I'm almost like visioning like a bird flying, and you just like spread it all around you. And it can also be as simple as just how you interact with one another at work or at your grocery store, whatever it is. We were talking about earlier how we're also like caught up in our busy lives, and the hustle and bustle of cities and social media and all this kind of stuff, and people don't even take time anymore to like lock eyes with someone and say hello. Or if you bump into someone, they hardly even look at you or say anything. And like, we don't know what's in other people. We don't know what kind of experiences other people have. So, if you can bring a small shed of like positivity and joy to a person in a day, that can mean a lot of things. And that person is going to bring that on to the next one. So it's kind of like a ripple effect, like it's paid forward in a way, of the passing of good energy, that I think it's important. And, that's just like the minor little things that we can do, that everyone can do throughout their day and in their life. But also at the yoga retreats, I want to, like I mentioned earlier, that we also bring that into the communities that we visit, whether that is, at a local family's restaurant that may not have as much as we're used to in our Western world. And the way that they are living off the land around them, they serve you hot chocolate made from the cocoa trees that grows wildly around them, or passion fruit juice that are just like picked up from the ground and squeezed into a glass. It's just, that is to me the true effect of sustainability. And for us then to be able to bring something to them, to support them, because we're able to, so why not? I much rather go to a place like that and buy a cup of coffee than to go to Starbucks or something. It's just it can just mean so much to people, and it can also bring so much to yourself if you just allow yourself to open up to experiences like that. So that's the social sustainability aspect of it. And I'm also fortunate in the job that I have in waste management, that to work on social sustainability projects where we give work training to people who have been out of jobs for several years due to different reasons, that haven't been able to get into the job market, and we give them work training for 3 months, and close follow-ups, and then give them the tools that they need so that they are able to apply for regular jobs. And we've been able to hire people from that program, and with good successful rate, which has not only saved the company a lot of money in recruiting cost, it gives so much positivity to these people's lives. And it's also saving our it's also saving our communities for a lot of money, because the government, you don't have people on welfare. So there's so many different aspects when we talk about sustainability that I think a lot of people are not, aware or think about when we use that word, because we tend to only focus, and I'm not saying that, we need to focus on the pollution problems that we have in our oceans and etc. as well, but there's so much more to it, and we need to look at it in the big picture. If we're going to have and see a change in the world, I really think that, first we have to work on ourselves. We have to work on our communities. We have to change attitudes and educate ourselves. And we have to kind of stand together as communities as well, across borders, so that we can, fight the actual global issues that are there. That's, some of the things that I kind of tap into at the yoga retreats as well. But obviously there's also plentiful of time for people to relax and enjoy themselves. But the balance between it's the balance of yoga every morning, free time to explore and relax and rejuvenate and actually have a nice holiday, and maybe get a little piece of education along the way and some inspiration for things to take home, and also just to open up the eyes to some local communities and get to know people that you probably never would have met if you had just gone on a regular holiday or a regular yoga retreat at a spa center. So that's why I also like to keep my group small. I rather have a group of 10 people than 30 people, because it brings us closer together, and it also gives me a better opportunity to give more of a individual guidance as well. And we always end every evening with meditation for an hour. So So yeah, there's like a good balance, I think, to everything. It's the
That's
full
great.
concept.
I love it. And just some other thoughts that came from me when you were talking about sustainability, particularly when you were referring to the program that your company has put on for people who've been out of the work scene for a while, who, if you don't keep your resume and your job kind of, in a certain place, and people kind of scan it and just think that you don't have anything to offer. When you're providing that, you're building up the self-esteem and the confidence of people within the community. And the more that you have people that feel good about themselves and useful within a community, that in itself creates sustainability. Not even talking about the drain, for want of a better word, but the fact that people then feel the need to go for government assistance, which for the most part most people don't really want to do, and it has such a stigma. It's never really that much, so you can't really have that much of a life on it. Everyone wants to feel useful in some sort of way. So that when you were talking about sustainability with regards to the workplace, that it was just like to have more people who feel that they're actually feeding into the community economically, bringing in something creatively, or just helping and being part of a work team would just help in terms of the future and bringing it forward. And also, I think we spoke about when we just said before, what really struck me about your company, whether they think they realize they're doing it or not, was just it was, even though it's in the corporate world, there's something that's really Aquarian about the way that they're recruiting. In terms of when they recruited you went in for another role and they kind of allowed you to show what you were capable of doing. And as you did it, the role grew around you. And then also being able to look at people and bring them in and go, you're useful people. Let's just kind of get you back to the point where you feel that you're employable, you're able to show that you have skills that you can offer to a company and a community.
You're definitely right. Like it's, I do think that that's kind of rare, and I really do hope that more companies, changed kind of their attitude as well when it comes to recruiting, because there are so many people out there who have so much potential and they have so much to offer, and they're never given the opportunity just because like they don't have perhaps gone to the right school or have the right level of degree or whatever, but they might have so much other life experiences that have shaped them as a person. Just an example, a couple of years back, and I was sitting in an interview together with another manager, kind of helping in the recruiting process. And we were looking to hire some drivers, and this young guy comes in, and he had just taken like his driver's test to drive heavy vehicles and didn't have any work experience in it. He wasn't from Norway. He had just moved to Norway because he wanted to start a different life, and had kind of taken this certificate so that he could potentially get a good job. And yes, on the resume, like he was probably, not by far the best candidate at all amongst like all the others. Like a lot of the others came in and they had like 20 years experience, behind the wheel. And then I started asking him a couple of questions about just like, tell me about yourself and where you come from and etc. And we started talking, and then he shares a story about how he grew up on a farm, and how he lost his father at a really young age, so he had to help his mother run the farm, and didn't finish didn't finish high school because of that. Because they didn't have the means for him to do both, and for him to be able to even come to Norway, they sold all the animals they had on the farm so that
Oh,
he, could come there and get a better job with more money so that he can also then send money back home to his mother. And
oh.
I said to him at the end of that whole interview, I said to him, you know what? That, that story just shows such a character.
Mhm.
Like, that really shows your personality. The fact that you did that, one, you worked on a farm. So that means that you're not afraid to kind of get dirty and, get physical in your labor. And um, it just really shows like a strong character that you did that for your mom, because a lot of young boys, might not have done that. Um, so he got the job, and
Mm.
he's still working at the company several years later. But you know yeah, I remember, like, my colleague was like, well, maybe we should go for this one, with 20-year experience and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I have an intuition about this guy,
Mm.
because this shows more of a character. I don't care what it says on his resume. And you know I think we need more companies need to look at it that way as well, because there are so much hidden potential around in people if people are only given the opportunity to shine.
Perfect. It's such a new and refreshing, but uh, ultimately it's one of the most obvious ways that you should do when you're bringing people into a company. I mean, unless you need someone who's a brain surgeon, then
Yeah,
for me, then
obviously. So
then if you've got someone that's got a story like that, like you said, it's like they sold everything that they had. It's like they've invested so much into this opportunity before he even got there. It's like we're putting everything that we have into this. And when someone, I suppose it's like being an entrepreneur or having a new idea, it's when you are prepared to put as much as you possibly can into something, then you're already showing willing. It's like, you would have had somebody who's been driving for 20 years, but maybe they're jaded. Maybe they've been driving for 20 years because that's what they've done and that's all they've known for 20 years. They might be experienced, but they might be bored, so just having that kind of fresh hunger, someone that has more than just the job, but a family back home that are depending on his success to do it. That you've got someone that's going to bring so much to the company, but then is also going to flourish as a result, and everyone around them is going to rise. It's like a win-win-win situation. I want to ask you now her conversation questions that I ask all of my guests. The first question I want to ask you is, what is the best piece of advice a woman has ever given to you?
that's the tough one, because I can't really pinpoint it to one. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier as well. I think it's just the combination of a lot of other like-minded women that I've met on my journeys in the last couple of years that have really, really kind of stuck with me in a way that has also like helped me maintain um, my belief in myself. Whenever I've like might have gone into doubts of like, should I really do this, or can I do this? Am I good enough? I feel like that is something that I can bring with me, is just, people that I have encountered on my journeys, and that that I have done the same, that I've learned from, and felt inspired by. And there's so many of them, so I can't really I can't really pinpoint it to one thing. There is one thing though that I remember my mom said to me shortly before she passed away. She was in the hospital and we were talking, and I remember she did say to me that you know, your father and sister are always gonna, you know, give you advice based on love, um, but you also have to listen to your heart. And if you really feel that you need to kind of go out in the world, then you have to do that. And that really just kind of stuck with me. So, and that's exactly what I've done as well. So,
and how great it feels.
Yeah, how great it feels. And I've done it many times. And I'm not going to stop traveling so anytime soon. So
Sure. And talking about travel briefly, where else do you want to go? What's next on your list, do you think? Where's next?
Personally, or for my yoga retreats?
Either or. Well, for you personally, because we'll speak about your yoga retreats in a moment.
Well, me personally, there's some places that I still haven't been that I would love to go. South America is a continent that I still need to explore. So I think maybe if I'm going to go on my next solo travel somewhere, you know, without a specific business purpose or anything like that, then that would have been definitely on my list.
Cool. Good one. And what woman represents higher energetic resonance to you?
To me, that's, you know, just a woman that really believes in herself and kind of, you know, are not afraid to follow her intuition,
Mm-hmm.
to really listen to the inner self. I think, yeah, that's how I kind of perceive the her lady.
Perfect. And what are your favorite self-care rituals and practice?
My self-care ritual practice depends on my mood. I'm kind of I wouldn't say I'm a loner, but I do, because I've also traveled to, so many places alone. I really enjoy my alone time. Just like curling up on the couch with my blanket and a cup of tea and watching something on Netflix, or even just like sitting on my computer and working and like, frying my brains out in creative options that I may or may not pursue. I love doing that. That's like definitely one of my favorite things, of just like, letting the mind wander of all possibilities of things I could potentially do. And I always write them down as well, and keep them. And sometimes I can keep them for like a year or something, and then I look back at it and I'm like, oh, that was not such a bad idea, and maybe I can like pick something from this, and then it kind of turns out into something. So I don't necessarily see those times as well as being wasted. So that's definitely something I would say. It's because I also feel like then, I don't know, it's for my clarity and my sanity and everything. Like it calms me, and I feel inspired by, having those moments.
Yeah.
And also obviously traveling. Like I said, I love traveling alone and exploring. The last trip I did, I went to see a friend in China, but I had a lot of alone time. And I traveled to like some, tiny little villages with just like these canals around and no cars. And it was just amazing to just kind of wander the streets and just, experience life, really. And obviously, last but not least, yoga. When I do my self-care ritual, it's definitely to maintain my practice, my self-practice. And, I feel like obviously we're always going to be both a teacher and a student. So I try to also go to different studios and just to kind of experience other teachers, how they do things, and different styles of yoga as well. Not necessarily only practicing what I've been taught in and what I teach to others, but for example, I love going to hot yoga and Bikram yoga.
Okay.
That's if I haven't done yoga in a day or two, then I feel like my body's just itching. Like I need to, I need to do some stretches. I can be like just lying in bed and just be like, I need to do some stretches now, and I just hop out and do them, and then I can go back to bed. If it's been like a day that I, been super busy and I haven't actually fully taken that time to myself. But I do try to do, that's the first thing I do in the morning. Definitely.
I went through Bikram. I've not done it for many years. Bikram yoga for about a year and a half or something like that. And then, but I was doing it, I kind of went through different phases. So I started with Hatha, then I went into Bikram for a bit, and then I came out the other side with like a kind of vinyasa flow hot yoga thing. And then I've ended up in Kundalini. I didn't ask you what yoga you trained in and what you do at your retreats. What yoga do you do there?
I do Hatha yoga. But I do incorporate a little bit of like power vinyasa sometimes as well. And I also do a lot of meditation. And I kind of emphasize, the breath work and everything. So, working on the Agni-Raj breath and the incorporating Kapalabhati and Agnisara and, different kind of pranayama practices. But yeah, it's mainly like Hatha. And my teaching comes from Hatha Tantra yoga.
And what's coming up next for you and the Sumati Concept?
Well, what's definitely coming up is doing another yoga retreat in Bali starting June 9th.
Fabulous.
And yeah, it's going to be the same place that I did now recently in January. So it's going to be at the Manipura Villa, just outside of Ubud for 1 week, and have some exciting things planned for that. And I'm actually launching the booking details and everything on this Friday, now in February. And then I'm doing another yoga retreat in France starting 3rd of August in the south of France. And that one is going to be a little bit different, actually, because I'm also certified stand-up paddleboard yoga instructor. So the one in the south of France is at this beautiful place located by the Mediterranean Sea and Mediterranean Ocean, and it's going to be both land yoga and stand-up paddleboard yoga. So that will be fun. And I also have a workshop in LA planned for the 29th of June. It's going to be like a 3-hour workshop on yoga and sustainability with some pranayama. And then we will see. There's some other yoga retreats planned as well, but I'm not going to disclose too much yet. But there are other locations as well in other countries. So, and might actually even be, somewhere maybe in Nicaragua or something. So we will see.
Okay. Wow. You're taking it around the world. This is great. It's so exciting for you. And we didn't even mention it as well, that the way that we met was we met via a Facebook group.
Yes. I love it.
That's how we met.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's how we met. And the fact that, you happened to then be in Bali when I was doing my yoga retreat. And I remember I was walking down because the other ladies had a day off to go shopping and stuff. And I was wandering the streets of Ubud myself. And all of a sudden it just dawned on me. I was like, wait a minute, Carol, she has a beautiful voice. Why not surprise my guests with like a really special closing circle night? And the fact that you then came and joined us and did the mantras and the singing, it just from like the moment when you started with the first mantra and opened your mouth, like my heart was shaking and I felt like I needed to cry. And I generally, like, I almost wish I had like grabbed the other ladies, because all of us, we afterwards were talking about it, but all of us really felt like we just wanted to hug each other and like, feel that connection. And it was just amazing. So we have to do that again at a retreat.
For sure. Like when are you back here? Did you say June?
Yeah. So you just have to stay in Bali until June.
Oh gosh, such a terrible, terrible burden to stay in Bali. You know what? At the moment, I'm just like, I don't even know what's happening at the moment in terms of where I'm going to be. There are certain things that I want to do that are in different countries in certain points, but it kind of coincides in, how you have to kind of come and go. So it may just be that I'm around, but I would love to. It was like such an honor to be asked to do it, because I'm trying to think where I was. I was somewhere where I had Wi-Fi, so I must have been inside somewhere. I saw the message come through and I looked at that and went, okay, yeah. And it's like you have these kind of things. It's like the first instance is like, but I haven't got, all the reasons why I'm like, I haven't got music, I haven't got keyboard, but I'm like, no. This is like a chance to create something really new and combine all the things that I love, which is obviously singing my songs, singing inspirational songs from other artists, and then always also bringing in like mantra and meditation. And it just allowed me within, to actually really meditate on it and create something that is then something that I want to do more of. And it's like, oh, this is cool for so many different reasons. But I thank you so much for the opportunity to do it, because it really opened my eyes to another avenue of what I can bring to the world as well.
I am happy to hear that, and it was so great to have you. So if we don't get to do it again at the Bali retreat in June, then there's other retreats coming up as well. So, we might meet and join forces in another country.
Well, you know how us travelers are, as long as we can stay connected online and work out where we are, then we can work out where we are, really. So can you tell everyone where they can find you online, your website, your social media?
I have a website. It's thesumaticoncept.com. And it's the same thing. I'm on Instagram and my Facebook page, at the Sumati Concept on both Instagram and Facebook. And if people message me on social media, whatever it is, or send me an email, I have this thing that I like to respond to people within 24 hours. So as long as I'm, connected to an internet in a place with Wi-Fi somewhere in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I'm happy to hear from people, if they have any kind of questions, or even want to collaborate or something, I'm just really open to connect with people. So
perfect. Thank you so much for coming on and being part of Her Conversations. I so appreciate it, and the way that we met and the way that it's kind of turned into what it is at this point, and who knows where we'll go from the future. So I really appreciate you being on.
well, thank you so much, and thank you for asking me. It's such an honor to be part of your journey and your projects as well, and yeah, to be able to join the forces. It's amazing.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you to Lisen for joining me on this episode of Her Conversations, and thank you for listening. You can discover more about me by visiting my website, carolmaywhittick.com. That's carolmaywhittick.com. And also you'll find out about my new project, which is Her Life Academy, which is launching this month, February 2019. Her Life Academy is a monthly instruction and inspiration platform that is specifically for the awakening woman. It's created for you to magnify your spirituality, your sensuality and your soul, and live in higher energetic resonance. This all launches in February 2019, and you can visit my website for more details and sign up to gain early bird access. On social media, you can find me under Carol May Whittick. My Instagram handle is Kazmic, that's CAZMICK, and also Her Life Academy has her own Instagram at Her Life Academy. And also, if you're signed up to any of the platforms, I'd appreciate if you could comment and like and share any of the episodes that really resonate with you. If you're subscribing, then you're going to get notified as soon as a new episode is published. So thank you once again, and until the next episode, take care, have a great week, and bye.